TBC Classic Phase 3 is literally right around the corner. Arena Season 3, Netherwing Daily Quest Hub, new profession crafts, and most importantly, 2 brand new raids, Mount Hyjal and Black Temple. I mean, I have heard so much about Black Temple. People say it's one of the greatest raids of all time, giving players access to the famous Warglaves by taking on Illidan himself. And well, I cannot wait to raid it for my first time ever. But for now, we still have a few last minute preparations to make. So starting things off, we are going straight into the Arcatraz. I know that seems like a bit of a weird thing to be doing on my main character, but we are here because of the Black Temple attunement. Exactly like the Tempest Keep attunement, there is a massive quest chain that we had to complete in order to actually enter into the raid. And well, we are about here on that list. And that does bring up the question of where did the rest of it go? Well, back about a month or so ago, you might remember I was having a little bit of a hard drive clear out, and I managed to not only delete literally 2 entire warrior videos, but also most of my druid videos as well. I know, I'm really good at this. So let me get you guys caught up a little bit. And well, I'll be completely honest, there really wasn't a whole lot that happened between last druid video and this one. Obviously I had started the Black Temple attunement, and as for raid loot, well, not much either, except I did manage to get a hold of the Belt of 100 Deaths, which is the best in slot belt for the entire expansion for literally every physical spec. Well, except Hunters anyway. It was just pure luck, to be honest. I think I had 2 SRs on it and I rolled a 98, and you can't really beat that, can you? As for the run itself, well, it was a fairly normal run as far as it goes. It wasn't heroic or anything, and I wasn't the only best out character in here. The Fury Warrior that we had with us was also super geared and doing the exact same thing that we were. So there was parts of the dungeon that everyone was drinking, so me and him just kinda went to it and started clearing stuff by ourselves. As for the quest, it really was just finding the NPC inside, who unfortunately appears to be ever so slightly dead. And looking back on this now, I realise that I probably could have just soloed this by stealthing my way through. So with the Arcatraz part of the quest done, of course, I swiftly made my way back to Shadowmoon Valley. And can I just say how unbelievably cool the Warden's Cage is? I mean, the first time I came down here, I was so confused, but it's just so well detailed in here. And it really does feel like you're in some kind of hidden prison. So after handing the quest in, the next part of the chain was an elite quest inside of Shadowmoon. And lucky for me, apparently everyone else is also doing this quest right now, and finding a group was pretty much instantaneous. And it wasn't too difficult at all, really. We just had to kill off 3 of these mobs that are channeling a beam into some kind of altar thingy. And doing so pisses off Shadow Lord Deathwhale, and he swoops down on his Drake, and we've then got to kill him. So after we had got him down, I went back into the Warden's Cage to hand it in. And unfortunately, there was a little bit of an RP queue, but the next part of the quest chain, we were unfortunately going to have to wait, because the next part takes place inside of Serpent Shrine Cavern. So fast forward to later on in the week, and it is time to raid. So as we are just clearing our way towards Hydros, let's talk about loot. Well, as I mentioned, we do now have the Belt of 100 Deaths, which honestly makes gearing 1,000 times easier, because usually I would shove as many SRs as I can into the belt. Now I don't have to, which in a way feels like a massive weight off my shoulders whilst raiding. So in this raid, we get a grand total of 4 SRs to use throughout both SSC and TK. And for my first one, the Van Braces of Ending. Currently, we're using the Nightfall wrist guards, and you might notice it is the exact same, but better. For our second SR, the Leggings of Murderous Intent. Again, stat-wise, they are just straight up better than Skulker's Greaves, but using these would take us below hit cap, so these are purely for use in a 6% hit set. Our third SR is the Verdant Sphere. Yes, even months later after this raid was released and shoving SRs into it every single week, I've still not gotten it. And finally, the Thalassian Wildercloak. Again, It is purely better stat wise and will only be used in a 6% hit set, which fair enough is basically every raid these days. So as I've mentioned many times now, I am a parsing fiend. I love parsing. It's one of my favourite things to do in this game, and parsing in TBC so far has been great. I was able to get rank 1 in Karazhan, and I was fully expecting to do the same in this phase. However, I can't lie, parsing in SSC and TK is a lot harder, because my guild isn't some massive high level guild or anything. We are just a pug group, and optimizing 10-man raids is way easier than optimizing 25 people. Now as a whole, that's not really an issue. On many fights I am still top 10 to 20, but our issue is fights like the lurker below, because in order to parse on these fights we had to kill him in like a minute, and simply we don't have enough DPS, and I'm like 900th on this fight, which has caused my rank to fall pretty heavily, and I've sat around 100th for this entire phase. The same can't be said for Fathom Lord though. I don't know what it is about this fight, but it's the only fight that I've had a 100 parse on this phase, and consistently I've managed to stay around the top 5 mark. As for the attunement quest, well, it's again as simple as freeing a trapped NPC from this cage and handing the quest in. And after we had done that, we just simply cleared the rest of the raid, which I'm not going to go into too much detail about because it really wasn't much of an interesting one, although Lady Vash did drop yet another belt of 100 deaths. I mean, we had gotten super lucky with belts though. Throughout this phase we must have gotten at least 10 of them, but weirdly we have seen 0 banned of the Ranger General, but massive congrats to whoever won it this time. So fast forward to next week. Unfortunately there really isn't much for us to do anymore between raid nights, apart from gold farming, so we are going straight into next week's raid. But first, we have to hand in the quest from last week, and once again the follow-up quest takes place in raid, but this time it is Tempest Keep. However, this time the quest isn't just speak to the NPC, this time we have to kill Alar whilst using the Ash Tongue disguise, which honestly I wasn't 100% sure was going to work with cat form and power shifting and stuff, but no, it does. It just looks incredibly goofy. It's like the game doesn't know what to do. As for the loot, well, our SRs this week remain exactly the same as last week. Bracers, legs, cloak, and Verdant Sphere, which by the way I did lose the roll on last week, just in case you were wondering. So we get Alar down, which does mean quest completed. However, I do love the silliness of this disguise thingy, so I decided just to keep on wearing it for the entire raid. And I know it sounds really stupid, but the clunkiness of the animations whilst using it almost makes Feral feel more smooth. So skipping past Void Reaver for now, and moving straight on to the third boss, Astromancer's Solarian, the boss that can drop our beautiful bracers, which by the way, I haven't seen drop a single time this phase yet. Now much like the lurker below, if you want to parse on this boss, well, you need to kill her pretty damn quickly. She is much easier to do that on though, but sadly this week, that wasn't the case. But we get her down, and finally, she dropped the bracers. And it was just me and Expose Armor that had soft reserved it. And so that leaves us with one boss left in the raid, Kilthas. Now I can't lie, I'm not a massive fan of this boss. I'm not really sure why, and it's not because there is a lot of mechanics. I mean, one of my all-time favourite bosses was Cthulhu, but this boss just doesn't give me the same feeling. Maybe it's because of the length of this fight. Typically this takes us like 5 to 8 minutes per kill, which is far too long. I mean, that's like retail level kill times. And it really doesn't help when you wipe for the first time since week 1, but it's whatever. That just happens sometimes. But we all res up, and this time we are successful at taking him down. And what does he drop? One Thalassian Wilder Cloak. But given the fact that there is literally 9 soft reserves on it, I didn't have my hopes up. So on to the most exciting part of the raid, rolling on the loot. Every single time one of my SRs drop, I get so excited. Even if I didn't win it, just being able to roll on a big upgrade is such a rush. So first up, was the bracers, and I managed to roll 62, beating the rogue, and we won the bracers. Second item for us to roll on was the verdant sphere, and I got absolutely hammered, since I rolled a pathetic 8, which I was kind of expecting. That's been the theme with this item so far. And lastly was the Wilder Cloak, to which I rolled a 54, and my immediate reaction was a massive sigh. But no, despite only rolling 54 and there being 9 others rolling on it, I surprisingly won it. And I just think it's kind of funny that 2 other people rolled 53. So once again, fast forwarding to next week, you might be thinking that I would hand the attunement quest in. Well no, and that's for 2 reasons. If we did hand it in, then we wouldn't be able to actually progress with it anymore, and that's because the follow-up requires us to go into Mount Highjaw, which obviously isn't out until phase 3. And because I love the Ash Tongue disguise thingy so much, and I wanted to keep using it, and I was afraid that turning it in would remove my ability to use it. But again, between raids, there really isn't much going on, is there? Now, okay, fair enough, if I was into PvP, I would probably be grinding that out. But currently, I was really focused on grinding gold, just so I can stockpile loads of it and be ready for future phases. But also, so that I could finally get epic flying. Obviously, because druids have their own epic flight form, and it has its own special quest chain that I wanted to experience. And as far as it goes, I would say that I'm pretty damn good when it comes to gold. And I don't know if you guys would maybe be interested in maybe a gold making video, like a proper one, not this clickbait bullshit that's always on my feed. Let me know. But enough about the gold. It is once again time for us to head back into raid. Now, since we had managed to get ourselves the bracers and the cloak, we actually now only needed 3 pieces of gear to be full BIS for both 9% and 6% hit sets. So now my SRs are 1 on the leggings, 2 on Verdant Sphere, and now 1 on the gloves of the Searing Grip. Now, in terms of raw stats, they aren't actually all that better than the gloves of dexterous manipulation, but the 18 expertise that they provide is huge, because with the gloves plus belt plus ring, that's 63 expertise, which should be enough, right? In terms of the parsing, things had really plateaued. I was really just struggling to improve any of my logs, apart from maybe 1 or 2 every week. One thing that did massively improve my rank though was 1-phasing Astromancer Solarian, and this week I believe was the first time that we were actually able to do that. And despite my DPS still not being ideal on this boss, things just didn't go my way unfortunately. I still went from like 1000th on this fight to like 50th, so no complaints. So we then move on to killing Kilthas. This time first try, no issues, and he does end up dropping the leggings of murderous intent, and I think this was only the 2nd time we had seen them drop, and I had solo SR'd them, which means they are automatically passed to me, which means in order to be full BIS, all we needed now was the gloves and the sphere. The day had finally arrived. Finally, I had managed to amass 5,000 golden coins. And to be perfectly honest, at this point I actually had the gold for a couple weeks, but today was the day I bite the bullet and finally buy epic flying. Yeah, that hurts. But now that we actually had this skill learned, we could teleport over to Moonglade and accept the first quest in the chain for our epic flying form, which immediately sends us all the way back to Outland and over to Zangarmarsh to yet another NPC, who now wants us to collect 10 Bog Blossom as well as a few other herbs that I just bought from the auction house. And originally, I did have some issues finding out where I actually had to get them from because there wasn't anything appearing on Questy. But after actually reading the quest, I know, incredible, turns out they spawn on top of the massive mushrooms that are dotted all around the zone. And the funny thing is, I've actually seen these plants on top of the mushrooms before, and I always wondered what they were for. Well, now I know. They also had a small chance of sending you flying when you pick them. But after I had those collected, I returned to the NPC and handed the quest in, which then sends us back over to Moonglade, where we had to go down into this little cave at the back of the zone, where I found Clintar Dreamwalker, who then takes us on a small and simple escort quest, where we walked around the cave whilst Clintar picked up different relics whilst we were protecting him. And whilst it was a very chill and simple quest, it has kinda been a while since we were in a Night Elf zone. And I can't lie, I miss it. I miss travelling around the weird fluorescent Night Elf zones. You know what, I kinda just miss leveling in general, I guess. But after finishing the escort and handing the quest in, we now had to go back to Zangarmarsh once again, and unfortunately my Hearthstone was still on cooldown, so I decided just to AFK for a bit until I could use it again. Once I was back on Outland, we were then sent over to Blade's Edge Mountains, and at first I thought we were killing the Apex Flares, quickly learned that that was not what we were meant to be doing, and that we were actually looking for this ghostly bird person, who also turned me into a bird person. I swear I've had this dream before. Now, originally I wasn't going to use epic flying until I had gotten the flying form. However, since we are doing quite a lot of running around at the moment, I decided to make a quick stop in Shatrath, and I grabbed this mount that I got for free by playing retail. And for the first time ever, I took flight with epic flying. And holy crap, the difference between regular flying and epic flying is ridiculous. I mean, obviously I knew it was faster, but not as fast as this. I mean, this is going to make everything so much quicker. So I made my way over to Nagran to continue the quest chain. This time to do probably the most frustrating quest I have ever done. We had to go on top of this hill where we had to catch one of the wild birds that were flying around. Sounds a lot easier than it actually is, because these things were so incredibly fast, and every time you got close to one, they ran away at the speed of light. Kind of like myself in the Tainted Core. But after like 10 minutes, the stars aligned and I was able to get it done. Next, we were off to Terrakar Forest for a much less annoying quest. What we were after was 8 Ravenstones, and the way we get them is actually quite unique. We use this whistle thingy, and that basically calls down, I believe, the bird that we just caught, and he will sniff out and dig up one of the stones for us. It's not that exciting or anything, but it's different. But after completing the quest and handing it in back in Blade's Edge Mountains, we started getting into the meteor part of the chain. We have to visit 3 of these big raven statues, where we have to kill a mini-boss as well as a load of ads that they spawn in. Now the first 2 were incredibly easy. All of the mobs died in a couple of mangles. However, the 3rd statue really started giving me some issues. I went into it fully expecting it to be just another spam mangle sort of situation, but no, I actually ended up dying. So when I had gotten back, I decided to do it properly, with bear form and keeping up fairy fire, demo roars and lacerates. But even then, I just couldn't seem to quite kill it. So I asked my guild if anyone would be willing to help, and luckily Setha was available, where I learned that apparently all of the statues are weak to different forms or something like that, and doing this one in bear form apparently wasn't the smartest way to do it. So with me tanking and Setha DPSing / healing me, we were successful in getting it down. So once again I returned to Blade's Edge Mountains and handed the quest in. And the next quest would actually take place in Ajara. And this was possibly the coolest quest I have ever seen in this game. What we're supposed to be doing is stealing the South Fury Moonstone, but when we do, this goblin pops out and steals it from us, and we've then got to chase her down the river. I mean, how cool is this? It's like a chase scene inside of World of Warcraft. I love it when you can tell that the devs put a lot of thought into a quest. And it felt really cool, chasing the goblin down the river as she was trying to stall us with stuff like freezing traps, etc. But eventually we do catch up to her and she hands over the Moonstone. So I hearth back to Outland and once again hand the quest in, and with that we are basically done. Except we just have the most important part left, heading into Sethic Halls and summoning the boss Anzu. And since Setha was just here having a chat, he offered to come and tank it for me. So I quickly threw together a group, which was pretty easy since I'm not hard reserving the mount or anything, and this was a pumper run. Not only was everyone extremely friendly, but this was probably the smoothest heroic Sethic Halls run I've ever had. But we get over to Anzu, and apparently I didn't have have the thing in my bag to spawn him in. But luckily, Setha did. So thank God for that, because the last thing I would have wanted to do was to have to come back tomorrow. And just in case you were wondering, no mount. And so with Anzu now dead, for the very last time I returned to the NPC in Zangarmarsh and I turned the quest in. And a few hours later, we had finally acquired the Druid Swift Flight form. Not 100% convinced it was worth 5,000 gold, but it was one of the best quest lines I have ever done. So, I'd say worth it. So moving back to doing some more raids now, it is the last few weeks of the phase. Our last few chances to get our last few pieces of BIS gear. Now in terms of soft reserves, my original plan was to do 3 times SRs on the Verdant Sphere and 1 times SR on the Gloves of the Searing Grip. However, our main tank Tyan decided that he also wanted my gloves. So just to spite him, and to make sure that I actually got the gloves if they dropped, I decided to shove all 4 of my soft reserves into them. So we get a Alar down, and there they were. Gloves of Searing Grip had dropped, and I had 4 soft reserves on them. And the Discord call kind of erupted, because I think that's when Tyan realised what I had done. So once all the raids were completed and everything was dead, including me, it was time to roll on the gloves. And let me tell you, I was beyond confident that I was about to stick it into Tyan and win the gloves. So immediately, I slam all 4 of my rolls. And every single one of them was pretty damn pathetic, with the highest roll being 65, and then Tyan rolled 98. That one hurt. That one really hurt. However, Tyan, being the absolute legend that he is, decided to let me have them, which was very kind of them. He really didn't need to do that at all. So thank you very much, Tyan. I will treasure it. So that means we only need 1 more item to be full Phase 2 BIS. And lucky for us, that item has a 100% drop rate. I hope you all enjoyed today's video because I enjoyed making it. Phase 3 is almost here, and let me tell you, I could not be more excited. Illidan is by far my favourite WoW character, and being able to fight him for the first time properly, man, it is going to be awesome. As for content, well, I do still have another warrior video locked and loaded, but I think I may end up waiting for that one until we can get some phase 3 stuff in there. And of course, if you guys are interested in seeing how I make my gold, I would be more than happy to make a video on it. And to be honest, most of my gold making knowledge has come from Setha. Anyway, I think that is enough yapping for today. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all later.